You're up for a good road rage story? Yeah, okay, it's not mine in the sense of I'm not responsible for it, but I'm going home last weekend after church, and I'm exiting off 75 at exit 108. So I'm going into this middle lane. You exit and stoplight, go through. Then you get in this lane. There's two lanes going this way. I'm in the middle one because there's another merging lane with people exiting I-75 north, or south. So they're coming off this. And it's packed. I don't know what's going on, but it's very, very busy and it's hectic. So I'm in the lane I need to be in. But at about 500 feet, I need to be over here to the right. But it's bumper to bumper, so I can't get in. So I've got the music going. I love music. Anybody else like the music in the car? Yeah, that's me too, right? So driving, minding my own business, caught up in my own little world, just doing David Green stuff, right? Rolling. And I see this car beside of me, but it catches my attention because it's a little close. You ever been in a situation like that? They're driving, but you know they're straddling the line, maybe even over it a little bit. So I look over and I see this guy, and the guy looks a little off. He's in the passenger seat. So he's doing passenger princess day, right? And his wife or his girlfriend, whoever, she's driving. So I look over and she's animated. So I'm thinking, oh, she's jamming to some music too, just like me. But the more I look at this guy, it's like he's slouching down. And he's got this hat and he kind of does this, like to block his face so I can't see who he is. Then I get a really good visual of the lady. She's almost over top of him. And I get, oh, she's trying to get my attention. And then I realize she must know me because she's waving like crazy. And I'm thinking, who is this and why is he ignoring me? Did I catch them, like at the Coldplay concert? Like what's happening in this moment? So she keeps waving and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's not a wave because there's only one finger going up, So I'm thinking, okay, what do I do with this situation? And I realize, oh, she wants over. And I'm the only person on this stretch of road that can make that a reality. So I'm in her way. I can't get over. So eventually the traffic starts moving a little bit. Finally, 2 or 3 cars deep, I'm able to get over. A little bit longer, she's able to get over. So when she gets over, she floors it and she zooms in front of me. So now we're bumper to bumper and you've got this trial temptation going on, right? What do I do with this? What happens here? So we both make this right turn and then I could tell by the way she's driving. She's switching lanes. I think she's trying to get away from me. It's almost like she has this moment where she realizes, oh, that just happened. And it shouldn't have. You ever been there? Something happens in your life and just a little bit down the road you realize that should not have happened. And I think about it, I've thought about it for this whole week. You know what? Me and this couple, same road, same direction. In a weird philosophical way, we were sharing a lot. So what happened? So we've been talking a lot about this word right here. And this is an ancient Greek word, peirasmos. So I think we have it up on the slide. All right, yeah. We've been talking a lot about this word. And this is an ancient Greek word that comes to us in its English form in the terms of trial or temptation. And what's really interesting about this word is when it's used as a noun, it's describing some person, place, or thing that's adding pressure to our lives. There's some person, place, or thing that is causing some tension in our lives. And that's where we translate this word trial. Then we've seen last week that that's the idea that something is actually happening to me. So there's some person, place, thing, or idea that is forcing pressure or tension in my life and something's happening to me and I'm not sure what to do about it. Trial. However, in the text that we're going to look at this morning, when you see this word right here, when we get to James 1:13, it actually shifts from a noun to a verb. Some action is actually activated. And that's where we translate it temptation. Because temptation isn't something that's happening to me. It's actually some person, place, thing, or idea is happening inside of me. And whatever's being offered, well, for some reason, it's alluring. I'm open to it. It's not that I feel the tension and I'm unsure. Actually, I feel something else happening, and it's a little appealing. So do I wave? Do I wave back? Do I follow them? Do I pursue? So that's temptation. Well, the past couple of weeks, we've looked at the idea of trial. And this week, we're going to shift and really focus on the concept of temptation. And what we're going to see in James 1 is that temptation is this idea that actually comes to us in 3 phases. So just lean over to your partner. And this is random, whoever you're sitting with, even if it's a stranger or if you came to church with somebody, just lean over. Gut response, when? When does temptation occur? And you got like 8 seconds. Go. When does it occur? Both of you share. All right, you good? Did you get it sorted? I am really surprised at how much conversation was going on, and it's actually still happening in some little groups here. That's impressive. I thought temptation was an idea when you ask, when does it happen? You don't really know, but here's when temptation occurs, and James is going to really elaborate on this. And I think if you and I follow, if we track with them through all 3 phases, you and I will realize that, wow, what I'm experiencing isn't necessarily a trial, it's a temptation. And there's something very specific I need to do about this very specific opportunity that I have before me. But temptation, I want you to know, it occurs when it's all about me. And that's just not a cliche church statement. James is going to drive this point home. Temptation occurs when it's all about me. And you see that this temptation, it's very personal. Temptation is very personal to the individual. So when you think about who you are, and what gets your attention, and what draws you out of the safety and the health of your family and your friends and your church community. That's temptation. It's very personal to you. It's not to say that no one else on the planet is facing what you're facing. But temptation, it's this desire that you have. And it's unique to you. So it's not that no one else on the planet is facing it, but probably no other person in your family or in your circle of friends, or maybe in your church community, is dealing with this the way that you are. That's why it's going on inside of you. It's very tempting. You might actually make that move. So here's what we mean by this. Notice what James says. Everyone is tempted. Notice this word. Everyone is tempted when, we'll go to verse 13. I think we have it, right? James 1:13. Yeah, okay. Each person is tempted when, and then notice what he says. You're tempted when, next slide, they are dragged away by their own evil desire. There's something happening in here, and you actually want it. Now, what you know about it is you know it may be dangerous. It may cause some consequences. It may compound into some stuff you don't want to deal with, but for some reason it's got your attention because it's so personal. It's really about you. It's focused on who you are, and it's luring you away. So you're tempted when you're dragged away by your own evil desire. It's something in here. This isn't a trial. It's a temptation. And then James tacks on these 2 words, and enticed. Now, has anybody ever clicked on some clickbait? You know what I'm talking about, right? You're just scrolling through your form of social media, whatever you love, and you see some kind of headline, doctors don't want you to know this trick. You ever clicked on that? Or what about, I saw this one. She discovered this simple life hack, and her life has never been the same. Like, have you ever clicked on that? Or I saw this one, no joke, and I'm thinking, do people actually click on this stuff? Not kidding you, okay? I should have brought it up here to prove I'm not exaggerating this. It said, man wanted to sleep with a den of lions for one night. Then this happened. Like, do you really click on something like that? Yes. Hunter, really? That one got you? Wow. What happened? Okay, all right. We call that clickbait, right? And I'm thinking, do people really click on that? And yes, some people do, right, Hunter? Some people actually click on this stuff because most of us would scroll through that. But then some of us were scrolling and something just catches our eyes. It's got our attention. And we want to click. Do you know this word enticed? It's actually a hunting term. And if you've got a study Bible, I bet the commentators will unpack this really well, or you can look it up later. It actually means bait. It's like the bait to catch a wolf or to catch a fish, where you lure it out of its safety. And then you've got it. So temptation is where the enemy is able to wrap something that is very clearly designed to you, to what you want, the bait that you would click, and he lures you out. That's amazing. I think that's one reason that when you read through the New Testament, you'll read these lists. It's like clusters of sin, and we call them vice lists. And it's a few verses where the author just goes sin after sin after sin after sin after sin. And I think that's one reason the author does that, because what I wouldn't click on, Hunter will. What you wouldn't click on, I may. In other words, you could say, I can't believe they did that. You've got somebody in your family, friend, circles, somebody you know, and it's like, I cannot believe they did that. Well, believe it, because you may not do that, but have been human long enough to know that you would, and you fill in the blank. And I know you would because I know David Green, and I've been David Green long enough to know I wouldn't do that, but I would, and I can fill in the blank. Temptation is very personal. It's unique to your makeup. It's your bait. That's a big problem. But that's when temptation happens. In other words, whatever you're being tempted with is there, and it will stay there. And it may not bother the 9 people that walk by it, but if you're 10, it gets your attention, because the temptation happens when you are enticed, when you're dragged away by something you want. Well, what happens with that? Well, James goes on. He says, so that's the when, but then he goes on. But before we get into that, this was my favorite pictures of Sophie. I've told you before, this is her that when she first got her permit. I mean, look at how happy that is. Have you ever seen a smile so big of somebody actually doing something? So I love this picture of her. So she gets her permit, and she's just wild, so excited about it. And I told you before, Sophie, I don't know why, she was just designed to drive. The first couple of days that she had her permit, we go out, we do a little driving. I stick to the neighborhood. I'm telling her the streets, what to watch out for, not to get too close to a parked car, all that stuff. We're just driving around the neighborhood, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's killing it. I don't want to take her out onto Winchester Road, but she's ready. So I take her out on the Winchester Road. She crushes it. A few weeks later, I'm like, I don't want her to drive on the interstate, but I want her to be able to drive on the interstate. We get on the interstate, she does a phenomenal job. She was just born to drive. And once she got her license, we hardly ever see her. She's gone, right, all the time. But anyway, in this moment, I had to present my license for something. I can't even remember what it was, but I was there, I was Dad, I had to show my license. So the person on the other side of the desk says, Dad, do you have your license? I'm like, sure. So I get my phone case out, give him my license, just out of curiosity, personal curiosity. Is your license in a phone case or a wallet? Wallet, raise your hand. Phone case, raise your hand. 2 of us. Okay, all right. So I get my phone case out, and I give my license, and she's like, oh, I can't accept that. I'm like, maybe I need another form of documentation. What is it? She's like, I just can't accept it. I'm like, why? She's like, it's expired. I'm like, oh. So I look at it and thinking she's wrong, but I look at it and she's right. So just time out. You may want to check. I'm probably going to use this story once a year at some point, so if you want to get your license out and check just to be sure. I was just going on. Simple mistake, right? Simple mistake. Well, James goes on after this. Notice what he says. Next slide. Then, so you're tempted when you're dragged away by your own evil desire. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth. And it gives birth to this idea of sin. Now, when you read the word sin in your Bible, there's a couple of different ways we can take it. One is the idea of what you'll read when you see the word trespass, which is like a slip. It's a misstep. It's a mistake. I had no idea my license was expired. It was a simple mess up. Overlooked it. Too busy. Didn't realize it was already that time to renew. But then there are some times when you read the word like transgress. Transgress isn't a slip. It's a step. That's where you know the boundaries. There's no mistake. You know exactly where you are. You know exactly where you shouldn't be. You see the signs, you see the warnings, you see the cautions, but you decided to step over that boundary anyway because that temptation is so strong. It's dragging you away. And then there reaches a point to where it's not really dragging you. You realize that it's switched and you're pushing through now. So James says, regardless whether it's a slip Whether it's a step, there's some stuff that's part of your life that shouldn't be, some stuff that needs updated or revisited, or something you need to look at and make sure that it's really what it should be. Because temptation, well, once you give into it, it actually gives birth to sin. Now, Meredith's going to come up and she's going to put this into perspective. And while she's coming up, you'll remember those two questions. And I don't want you to see them on the screen. I just want you to hear them because I'm going to shift them just a little bit. Those two guiding questions that we've been asking through this series. That when we're talking about this really practical stuff that's part of who we are, our makeup, our design, well, who is God calling me to be? And what is God calling me to do? Can I tweak those just for this morning? And let me ask you this question. If temptation really is about what's happening in me, well, let me ask you this. What is God doing in your life? And now contrast that with this. What are you actually doing with your life? Meredith.
Good morning, everybody. Okay. Let me make sure all my stuff's not falling over. Okay. So I've got two questions to pose to everybody this morning, and while they may not be earth-shattering or groundbreaking, I just want to ask these two questions. So the first one, Macy Lee, going ahead and flip it. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Talk with your group. Go. Talk with your neighbors. That's it. Is a hot dog a sandwich? All right, raise your hand if you say yes, a hot dog is a sandwich. Okay. I knew that I was going to have some people who were adamant about their answers. All right, my no's. Who are my no's? Okay, who is my adamant no? Sarah Beth, go. Why are you an adamant no? Okay, but what constitutes a hot dog? What makes a hot dog a hot dog? Okay, so now let me pose another question here. Oh, go, Spencer. Okay. Well, is a hot dog a sandwich? Well, so now let's flip over to the other end. What makes a sandwich a sandwich? Well, okay, what does the bread have to do with it? Does the bread have to be separated? Okay, one on top, one on the bottom. How many of y'all ever been to Subway before and they slice it right down the middle? But it's a sub sandwich. That's what, okay. But then let me pose this question. Is a hamburger then a sandwich? 2 pieces of bread with meat in the middle? I hear some yeses, I hear some no's. But then someone says, well, what if you're a vegetarian? Let me throw this out there. What about peanut butter? 2 pieces of bread. It's a peanut butter sandwich, okay. So I wanted you all to think about that in terms of how do we classify things? How do we look at something and say there's a distinct line of differences and there's some similarities here? So now I'm going to pose a second question. Basically, go on to the next one. Can you consider cereal a soup? Okay, I hear lots of no's. I think everyone's more adamant about this one. But what makes soup soup? Okay. How many cold cucumber soup people are in the building? That's okay. That's I got Denise over there. Okay? But I want you all to see your perception changed a little bit. That's what one person saw as a hot dog. Could we see that there are some similarities? There's certain nuances or layers to sandwiches, even though we think that they're in 2 distinct different categories. And the same thing for cereal. There's milk. I went down a deep rabbit hole with these questions the other day, and there's this one person who said if it's Lucky Charms, he would consider it a soup because it's marshmallow. It's more than one ingredient. You got soup, you got the grain, and you got the marshmallows. More than one thing. And I went, okay, I can probably get behind that a little bit. But if it's Cheerios, no, that's a cereal. That's because there's not more than one ingredient. But again, how do we define our layers, our nuances? So I want to throw this graphic up here. Okay. In mathematics, especially in higher levels. That's what my high school math teachers, that's what, we look at something that's called set theory. And the way that I always try to describe set theory to my kids is get the image of a Russian nesting doll inside your head, okay? You guys know what a Russian nesting doll is, okay? You have this one large doll, but what the best part about it is that there are smaller dolls embedded inside of that. So when we look at temptation and trial, in the center, we're looking at the similarities. That's a pierismos. That word right there, we can use it for both a trial and temptation, but it all depends on the context in which we're looking at it. And we can all say that they're both tests of faith. When we talked about equivalence last week, I feel like that was probably the most important piece of it, is that equivalence is when something looks different, but its value is really saying the same thing. But when we start to look at the nuances and the layers between these unions and intersections of trial and temptation, David already talked about one of the biggest important ones is that in verse 12, it's a noun. But then in verse 13, it switches over to a verb. Next, that's kind of leading into next week when we're going to talk about math as a language. And that's going to be what I'm going to be teaching on, is how math as a language and syntax and structure plays a part of that. But with a trial, it's supposed to bring you closer to God. We're able to look at this through the book of Job. Job is one of the biggest books that, especially if you're going through a trial, that is one book that I recommend you reading, that it's supposed to bring you closer to God. But a temptation is supposed to draw you away from God. Temptation is what pushes us to do wrong, pushes us to sin. But whenever we're in a trial, it's pushing us to do what is right, and perseverance is the outcome. So when we look in James, there's a particular verse that I want you all to look at. Let me get flipped over here. Is verse 13. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. One of the, I'm trying to think of the word. That's what, commentary. There we go. That's the word. When I read commentary, Enduring Word is my favorite commentary because I like how it combines multiple different perspectives and multiple authors. And Charles Spurgeon put it perfectly, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Satan tempts, but God tries, meaning that God will give us a trial. So to sum up everything for this week, I'm going to give you a little bit of some set theory or set notation. And so the equation that I want to leave you with today, that's what, basically go ahead and flip to that last one. Temptation is not an element of God. So when we look at our set theory, that's what we talk about, those Russian nesting dolls. When we open up a nesting doll, say the largest one's God, and we break open each of those individual ones, temptation is not going to be one of those smaller nesting dolls. It is not an element of God. So when we are going through temptation, we have to know that it is Satan. It is the evil one who is trying to tempt us, because temptation is not an element of God.
Madison Hills, I have all the faith and confidence in the world in the health of our church. And if I think about Madison Hills like having a rift that would cause a division, like that's not even on my radar. But when I listen to about your commentary on is a hot dog a sandwich, like we need to be in prayer about that. That got tense. Wow, so I don't know, okay? All right, but anyway, what do you think about that idea that temptation is not in the set of God? Like it's out of his realm. So when you're tempted, no one should say, God's doing this. No, we're tempted when we take the bait. Then sin comes our way. Well, James doesn't end there. He actually goes on. He says, that's the when, that's the then, but then and. So this picture right here, do you know this picture? Do you recognize this? Several days ago, kinda. I bet you would recognize if you saw the other side of the picture, but I just don't want to trash this individual. But this is a picture that happened after a baseball game, because what you probably saw was a ball was hit into the stands, and a father went and got the ball, brought it back to his son, and then a lady rushes over and demands the ball, and then this guy actually hands it back to her. A lot of you saw that video and the pictures of her, and I don't want to plaster her all over this, because For the past 7 to 10 days, however long ago it happened, this lady has been all over social media and the news. I mean, she went to bed one night with this baseball from a game, and she woke up the next morning with the world hating her. Like the world was at her throat. Like Spirit Halloween, we're not going to get into Halloween stuff, okay? So calm down, we won't talk about all that stuff. But Spirit Halloween, there's all kinds of people who have this now in a bag, this costume that looks like this lady that you can get and wear for Halloween, right? And have you seen the videos of people making like personalized action figures, those little boxes? So if like they put Dave Bramer, they would probably put a hammer and like some kind of deed because of the property zone, stuff like that. You would personalize it. There's a personalized action figure of this lady. Like she didn't expect that going and asking or demanding for this ball would upend her world. And that's what sin does. It destroys. By its nature, it brings death. And sometimes that death is unexpected. That's why this verse is so important in James, or this idea that the temptation is all in here. It's happening in here. And it's dragging me away. Like I'm feeling it. I'm open to what it's offering here. But I've got to cut that off. I've got to deal with that because that's going to produce sin. And then sin, it's going to produce death. I mean, we know this. We see it all the time. So we see it with this lady. And then we realize, wow, because of sin, people get divorced. People get fired. People get expelled. People get imprisoned. So James says, here's when, and then, and. He adds this too. And, go to the verse. And with sin, when it's full grown, it gives birth to death. So I bet in a room this size right here with all of us gathered, there's some stuff that's dying that should be thriving, should be fully alive in your life. So what's God doing in you, in your life through this series? And what are you doing with your life? Some time ago, I had Christian put this picture together for me. I had a friend. I was doing some really good work down in Tennessee, some just great people. And I got to be really good friends with a guy named Danny. And Danny was this truck driver, just a really good, rugged guy. And he was really funny, you know, just one of these big teddy bear kind of guys. And he and I got to be really good friends. And he actually asked me to do he and his wife's wedding. And we went over to the Tennessee Theater. He actually rented the Tennessee Theater out just for this wedding. Got to go up on the stage and everything. Just a beautiful morning. They both looked great. It was fantastic. Well, Danny knew that I had a fear of heights. Heights just, you know, they put me on edge. I'm just not a heights guy, okay? Just not. So Danny said there's this actual walking bridge that you can do where you're not walking over the bridge. You're actually under the bridge. And you can see how high up it is. And it's like $50, $60 a person. He was like, me and you and Michelle and my wife are going on this walking bridge. And he started about 6 months out. And he was like, I'm going to buy the tickets. And I'm going to come and I'm going to tie you up, throw you in my trunk, and just bring you. And we're going on this thing. So I was like, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to convince this guy that this already happened. So I had Christian Photoshop my face and Danny's face into a group that had already been, and I was going to give this to him and say, man, that was so much fun, Danny. You were right. I wasn't really that bothered by the heights and everything. You know, just try to really convince him that we already made this happen. Well, Christian made the faces just a little too big, so it wasn't going to work, right? But anyway, the day that I was going to present this, I was actually going to use this in a little bit of teaching. The day before I was going to present this, got a phone call that Danny had went to get one of his trucks. And while he was at the stop where they do the loading and unloading, he got into a little scuffle with a guy. And it turned into a very heated exchange. The guy pulled out a gun and he shot and killed Danny right on the spot. I've been thinking a lot about that this past week. Thinking a lot about what's going on in our world and what's going on in your world and my world. And I want you to know that whatever's happening in your life, we've got to make a distinction. Is this happening to me? And I'm not sure what to do. Well, that's why I'm glad you're here. We can come alongside of you and help you sort that out. Or is there something happening in here? And I'm just not looking too far into the future. I'm actually just looking a few feet in front of me. And I'm just so caught up in this temptation or that bait. And it's really dragging me away. Well, we want to stop that so it doesn't give birth to sin. And then sin destroys something in your life, causes something very valuable to die. So here's what we're going to do. The next few moments are going to be just a little different. We're going to play it by ear. I've been in prayer for this for a few days now, and I'm just unsure. So just follow the lead, if you will. And when you're prompted, if you feel like you want to follow through, then follow through. If not, you're still here and you're still part of this. But the next few moments are going to be fluid. But the band's going to come up and they're going to sing a song. And we sang this several weeks ago. And I gave this big spiel about how valuable this song is. I'll talk to you about a certain line in this song that says, Jesus wore my sin, so I'll gladly wear his name. And isn't that powerful? I mean, you think of the stuff that's part of your life that shouldn't be, some stuff that's part of your past that never, ever should have been. That's the stuff that went wrong. Jesus wears that. So why would we not gladly wear his name? Well, this week I want you to focus on this line right here. Whatever was going on in Danny's friend's life, his colleague that pulled that gun and shot him, is the same kind of stuff that's going on in our lives, in our worlds. It's that bait. It's that temptation. It's that thing that's happening in here. And I'm trying to deal with it, or maybe I'm not trying to deal with it. But something's happening in here. And it's leading us to a place that you and I, we don't belong. So what's the answer? Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you asked that question, because Jesus is the answer. He's always the answer. His ways are the answer. So this letter that we're walking through, James was actually the brother of Jesus. And he has the inside scoop on what Jesus taught, what to live out. And that's why we're doing this series called Discipleship, and we're building it around James' teaching so that you and I can understand practically, not some theological issue, but practically what you and I do now and what we do next, and what we do later, what we actually do with what God is doing in our lives. So the first thing I want to ask you to do is just stand, and I want you to sing this song, and I want you to feel it and mean it. If you've never heard it before, learn it, internalize it. Listen to these lyrics, because this is one of the best songs going, and I know that sounds subjective, but it really relays us to the heart and mind of God. And it echoes what James is trying to get us to do, which is to choose to follow him, because he has the answer for the temptation that you're going through. Whatever it is you're struggling with, he's the answer. So as always, I'm available in the back, and I will gladly pray with you. But after that, I'm going to come back up, and we are going to do things just a little differently. So if this song speaks to you and you can't sing it because it's in one of those moments where it's really resonating and you're getting it, you don't have to sing. Just allow this to become a part of you so that what we're teaching about through this series becomes a part of you. God, we open ourselves to you now in worship, and we trust that you will meet us exactly where we are, and that's here. And we trust you because of your son, Jesus. Amen.